Hi, it's Friday and you made it. I don't know if you made it. I'm just assuming if you're watching TV or at least you're in vacation weekend mode, and so am I. I have a little treat for you tonight. Very rarely does like your holiday long weekend coincide with like a crime story, but this one will, because I'm getting the feeling that you might be making a plan for your weekend Netflix binging, and I have one for you. It's all about cheating. It's about cheating and then cheating the cheaters, which is always delish. But this one's really cool. If you remember Ashleigh Madison, no relation. But Ashleigh Madison was this cheating website that was launched for married people to have an affair, under the radar, so they thought. But then it was hacked. The website was hacked, and they had millions and millions of customers. And all them customers' names got published, and all them customers' lovers and spouses and families found out. And it was like disaster, right? So, as it turns out, there's this amazing Netflix doc all about it and the disaster that was and how it happened. And then some of the people who actually got swept up in it are actually talking about why they signed on in the first place, what they believed Netflix, or rather Ashleigh Madison, was going to do for them in keeping them private. And then there's this hook, this twist. It's crazy. It's on the rise again. Oh my God. Okay, so we're going to talk all about that. And the two of the stars from the series, a guy who got caught cheating and his wife, still together. So they're going to join me. And then this is such a weird story, and I don't know how you're going to feel about it. And no judgment, okay? Death is part of the criminal justice system, whether you're the victim or whether you're the perp, because we have death penalty in half this country. And there's a death row inmate who's like 18 days away from his scheduled death, right? The state is going to take this man's life in 18 days, unless he takes his life first. What? Let me explain. So he is very sick. His family says that he's like in heart failure. He's been rushed to the hospital. Of course, it's like an inmate hospital, right? Because he's been in prison since his crimes of killing 2 people. But he's in the infirmary and he's dying. And it's kind of like this race to who's going to kill him first, his own natural body or the state. So the question is, will the state just go ahead and do it anyway? Like, will they have to wheel a guy in from a hospital? It's such a cool issue. But then what might be even more cool is that we talked to him. We talked to him before we knew that he was, going into heart failure, and it might be his last interview ever. So we got that for you. Don't go anywhere. You got to hear that. And then if you can believe it, it has been more than 20 years since Elizabeth Smart was abducted and held against her will, violently raped every single day of her abduction for 9 months. You would think that would break a person, but not her. She has spent her life since she was rescued in service of others, in service of other victims, and she's telling stories about other victims as well. And one of the coolest stories is about to go on Lifetime television. Elizabeth actually sits down with another woman who was 14 when she was abducted. Elizabeth was 14 as well, and Elizabeth does the interview with her. So they've literally been through the same thing. But that victim was held for 20 years. 10 years. She was held for a full decade. Fabulous movie that Elizabeth is producing, and then Elizabeth is going to join me on the program and talk about why she got into that project and what that does for her, to tell you the stories of others like her. Fantastic. Don't go away. Let me start here, though. Do you remember the days when making a love connection with a stranger meant taking out a personal ad in the newspaper and then waiting, a week or so for any kind of result? Those were the days, folks. There was no swiping left, no swiping right. And one of the best songs ever, called Escape by Rupert Holmes, explained it all beautifully, but you may not really do. But the internet changed everything. It took the personals out of the newspaper and it put them on the web. And there was no website that leaned into the online hookup culture like Ashleigh Madison. Do you remember early 2000s? That was the company that said, life is short, have an affair. And do you know what? Millions of people did just that, using that website. But when the website was hacked, the empire built on don't tell, it fell apart. And it did Well, it just wreaked havoc on millions of clients and millions of clients' marriages and families. You have got to see the Netflix documentary about Ashleigh Madison's rise and fall. It is fascinating. And the show really tells us how a little indecent exposure took its toll on a lot of people who really weren't expecting it. The 3-part series is called Sex, Lies, and Scandal.
It was a dating site for married people who wanted to have an affair. When I would go to trade shows, and they would say, who's your biggest competitor? And I'd say the Bible.
Just the deepest, most personal stuff you can imagine people were providing to this website and trusting it to keep safe. Think of the people's lives that could potentially be ruined if that intimate information got out there.
I didn't really hesitate to give out my information. Maybe I would on other sites, but this one specifically, they told you how protected you were. I trusted they would lock it down hard. But when I signed up for Ashleigh Madison, I made one of the biggest mistakes of my life.
I just love this. I love the idea that people thought somehow that there was a fail-safe method of going hunting for available women when you were married, and that somehow karma would not fall on you like a ton of bricks.
Well, you can call it karma if you want, but people like Sam Rader were busted and ruined. Somehow, though, Sam and his wife Nia held things together, and they are still together today. They are central to the Netflix doc, and they have co-authored a book called Sam and Nia Live in Truth. Public Scandal, Secret Vows, Restored Hearts. And they are with me live tonight. Sam and Nia, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate this.
Hi, thank you for having us on.
Yeah. Okay, so first question is, how did this not split you up? And either one of you can answer.
How did this not split us up? Jesus.
Yeah, that's the short answer. I mean, it almost did, but there's a lot to consider with our history, and yeah, there was a lot that went into it, but we held on, and with Jesus, we made it through.
I'm seeing a sign behind you that says, so many of my smiles begin with you. Do you kind of have to give yourself affirmations every day? Because, a lot of people will say once trust is broken, it's really, really hard to ever have it the same way again.
Yeah, it is hard to have it the same way again, but really I didn't have it in the first place, speaking from, someone who was betrayed. And really learning that I can't put my trust in another human has been a huge lesson for me. I really need to be able to put my trust in something or someone bigger than my husband, because whether he's betraying me or doing anything else, humans are going to let other humans down. And I'm thankful that I have faith in someone bigger than my husband.
I'm trying to wrap my head around that. You have faith in God, and I'm looking at both of you and maybe imagining you both have your faith in God, but you still have to have that bond. So, Sam, how do you have that bond with your wife if she's just said what she said, which is she can't trust you, she's got to trust God instead?
I'm sorry, what was the question? How do you have what?
Yeah, how do you keep that bond with Nia when she just said, you can't trust humans, I can't trust him, I was betrayed, I've got to trust something bigger, I've got to trust God. At some point, you got to really, have a bond with each other too.
Well, yeah, of course. But when the hack happened and I exposed everything I was to Nia, we needed both of us needed to rely on something bigger than each other, because I no longer had Nia, she no longer had me. However, I did try to make myself as available to her as possible, but I did not deserve to have her anymore. However, she still deserved her husband. But during that time, it was the first time of our adult life, basically, that we didn't have the biggest support in our life anymore. Mm-hmm. And so both of us chased God and developed a relationship when that was more solid than ever. And when that happens, you meet back at Jesus. Like that's what is beautiful about Jesus and the Word of God. It brings people together. And so that's basically where we met back up. And our bond, of course, is very still romantic, intimate now.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have to give credit to the Lord because of him, Nia made the choice not to divorce me. Because of him, I had true repentance, and I knew how ugly my sin was, and I turned away from them. Nia saw that repentance, and she was able to trust me again.
Man, that's big because not a lot of people can do that. So, Sam, I'm curious about, getting over the awfulness of the hack and the revelation and then what happened between you and Nia. That would have been a massive hurdle, right? Like a huge mountain to climb in your life. And then here we are, 20 years later, and Netflix comes calling. I'm curious about your decision to take part in the documentary because, like, all of a sudden the can of worms is sort of slightly open in a different way again.
Yeah, just like I was concealing secrets from Nia during the first several years of our marriage, it ate away at me, and it caused division in our marriage. It caused suspicions on her part. It caused me to keep weaving this web of lies. And what they say is you're as sick as your secrets. And so I had lied to our viewers, our channel, which we saw as our ministry to show people what it looks like for a family to live for the Lord and how to raise children for the Lord. And I lied to all of them. And that ate away at me for year after year after year, just in the same way it did keeping lies from Nia. And the Bible was clear that God would not be mocked. And I just knew one day I would have to confront those lies publicly, just the same way I told those lies publicly. I had just been looking out for the way, and Netflix presented themselves, and they made it clear that I would be allowed to confess those lies. That's why they let me watch that video on the iPad, and that our redemption story would come through. And if our redemption story can come through, of course I'm going to share it. It's clear the Bible wants us to do that. Have you been redeemed? Speak out. That's what the Bible says. It was our opportunity to speak out.
It's really fascinating that you guys chose this path, and especially together. And Nia, maybe tell me a little bit about it, because Sam just mentioned the social media following. For those who don't know, and there are millions who do, you guys have a very big social media following. Did you feel, when Netflix came calling, did you feel the same way Sam did? Like, oh God, we got to live this all publicly. Did you feel like that's a good thing? Maybe we can teach other people the path that we've discovered, and maybe our bad will be their good.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we went through a really hard thing and made it through to the other side. And it seems like, why would I keep that to myself? There's definitely got to be some other woman in my shoes battling the same battle, the mental, emotional battle that I was, that I could encourage and say, divorce is not the only way. You don't have to divorce your husband just because he cheats on you. Redemption is real, and it is an option. Forgiveness is an option. And we have a better marriage now than ever could have imagined. There's so much depth to it, and I really want other women to see that. I feel like it's not something we get to face as women. We're told the opposite.
It's definitely different for everybody. For some people, divorce is the answer, without question. I think there's a lot of people watching right now who might be divorced who said that would not be a viable option for me. My situation with a spouse was very, very different and irreparable, and the trust or the abuse or whatever it was they endured, we have to respect that part as well. I'm curious, Sam, when you deleted your account, and as I understand it, correct me if I have it wrong, Ashleigh Madison had said when you delete your account, it's gone. It wasn't. That stuff was still in their files that were hacked. Do you have any grounds to sue Ashleigh Madison, or did you?
There was a class action lawsuit against them, but I went my own separate way. I had a friend who was a lawyer, and I casually sued them, but I just left it all in the lawyer's hands because, honestly, I was like fighting for my marriage hardcore at that point. It was definitely way on the back burner. But the lawyers dropped it. I guess they went bankrupt or something. But yeah, of course, that's grounds to sue. It's just unreal that they said they would do something and they just didn't. It just makes me wonder how many companies are doing that kind of stuff.
So the weird thing is, and I know you guys are aware of this, is that it's on the rise again. Like Ashleigh Madison's making a comeback and powerful and strong and getting lots of users. And I kind of wonder, like, Nia, what do you have to say to the folks who are signing up for the site now and doing what it was that just destroyed you guys before you rebuilt?
Oh, my goodness. I would say this is a temporary fix. And before you know it, you're going to find yourself wishing you could undo what you're doing right now. And, and honestly, just like, I feel like it's primarily males, as we saw in the documentary, just to say, like, your wife is a lot stronger than you think she is. Like, come clean, have this open communication, and live in the truth.
Yeah, it's good.
What do you think, Sam?
I meet with men, I see men once a week who struggle with thoughts of infidelity, and I see how widespread it is. And I feel like I'm taking quite a bit of the brunt of 30 million men being on that website right now. But I would just say, guys, come on, like, it's not there. It's full of lies. We've been lied to. Like, that's not, like, we can't have like true satisfying sex without the intimacy. Like, it's not there. It's empty, and it leaves you unsatisfied. And there's something else we're searching for. You're not searching for that. We're confusing it for something else we're searching for, and that's the hole in us that is Jesus. And that's what I would tell these men.
Well, listen, I'm super appreciative that you guys joined me. I was so curious about your story, and being able to talk to you, I think, is really very enlightening. So thank you, and I wish you both the best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sam and Nia Rader in the Netflix series that's out this weekend. It's very exciting. And there's their book, Sam and Nia, Live in Truth, Public Scandal, Secret Vows, and Restored Hearts. Coming up, it is hard to believe this, but it's been more than 20 years since Elizabeth Smart was ripped from her own bedroom and held captive for 9 months. Today, Elizabeth is an advocate for other crime survivors, but she also tells their stories. And just imagine the dynamic here when she's sitting down with a kidnap victim who was taken at age 14, just like Elizabeth was. After the break, the amazing story that she's turning into a movie. Elizabeth is going to join me. Elizabeth Smart was just 14 when she was kidnapped at knife point from her own bedroom in Salt Lake City back in 2002. She was held, and Elizabeth was repeatedly raped every single day for 9 horrifying months before finally she was rescued. Almost 22 years later, one of her captors is still behind bars, and the other, the woman, has been released. And Smart herself has become a wife, a mom, and a child safety activist who's now telling the stories of other kidnap survivors. She has teamed up with the Lifetime Network for a film that's based on the hellish ordeal of another woman, a woman named Tanya Cash, who, like Elizabeth Smart, was kidnapped at age 14. A security guard at Tanya's middle school snatched her and then held her for a decade, locked inside his bedroom in McKeesport, Pennsylvania. He sexually abused her at will. But in 2006, Tanya was finally able to escape his captivity at age 24 when her captor, for whatever reason, allowed her to work part-time at a convenience store. The Lifetime film is called The Girl Locked Upstairs, the Tanya Cash story.
I heard what you said about me. I swear I wouldn't do that. Stop lying!
Hey, clear out of here. Stephanie Darlick, principal, now.
Why is everyone here so mean?
We're friends, aren't we?
You're my only friend.
For you, Tanya, I'd do anything. Tanya, what are you doing here?
I can't stay at home. My mom turned me away, so I need to stay someplace else.
No one can know you're here.
Okay.
This is the only way you can be safe. Don't make any noise. This isn't gonna be forever, I promise.
You've got to take control of your life.
It's not my life.
What excuse do you think you could have for breaking my rules?
I can't go on like this.
Lifetime is also going to do a documentary where the real Tanya Cash opens up to Elizabeth Smart about the horrors of captivity and the realities of victim blaming after her escape.
He started giving me beer and alcohol to loosen me up. But he was very sweet about it, though. He was not mean. You know, he was like, this is going to be okay. This is right for us. I was tipsy. I was buzzed. But I still was very aware of what was going on. I felt I wasn't ready. But he kept saying, no, you are ready. What am I to think at 14? You know, like, okay, I just lost my virginity, something huge that I made a promise to God I wouldn't do. After everything was said and done, and he was not so nice. He got his way, and he's like, I own you now.
I mean, you were just a child.
Yeah.
Like, what a monster.
Earlier, I spoke with Elizabeth Smart about both the film that she produced and the documentary, and here is our conversation.
Her story, first of all, is incredible, and she survived and should be a beacon of hope to everyone, because I think it's really easy to think that once someone disappears that they're gone forever and kind of write them off as dead. But I'm here. Tanya's still here. We're not dead. Do not give up. But also beyond that, I feel like her story is a perfect example of a vulnerable child where a predator finds her and grooms her. And the team works so hard in trying to show the different steps of grooming and how it happens in layers. It isn't just you see someone and you take them and that's grooming. I mean, it's a whole process. You know, it's identifying a vulnerability. It's isolating that child, befriending them, making sure that you are that number one person in their life, giving gifts, making them rely on you, turn to you always number one, until eventually you can do whatever you want without any fear of repercussion, and knowing that that child will always keep their mouth shut. And I felt like Tanya's story just illustrated that so perfectly. And it's an area that I feel like is often misunderstood.
And undefined. I think people hear the word grooming and they just don't get it, and they think it's white noise, and they really don't know that depth and meaning that you just put to it. Because I think about you a lot and what you endured for 9 months, basically wanting to survive every single day and having one or two people who were responsible for that survival. So I think you're the perfect person to get into this project. I also think, what was it like for you to sit down with somebody who had such a similar experience, such a rare and similar experience to your own experience? What's it like to sit down and speak with someone about that?
For me, I mean, it was I just felt like we understood each other on an emotional level. I mean, when she was talking about how she felt, different experiences, that maybe some of the details of our own personal experiences are different, but a lot of the emotions she expressed, I was like, yeah, I know exactly how that feels. I know exactly what you're talking about. That was my life. That was my story as well. And so that, for me, I think is also just another reason why sharing these kinds of stories and doing these kinds of projects are so powerful, because for as isolated as people may think that Tanya's story is or my story is, it's actually really not that isolated. It really is more common than any of us would want to believe.
Big differences between you and Tanya as well. Your family, so dedicated, so loving, so moral, so principled, and they never stopped for a second looking for you. Tanya's family, on the other hand, really a difficult upbringing, a father who I think effectively may have blamed her, for her own abduction. How do you come to terms with the differences there and yet the similarities?
I think is one of the most heartbreaking parts of the story. And I think for me, that's why I have chosen this path in my life, because I do have that support. And honestly, I think what it comes down to for victims who really thrive in life after they've survived comes down to that support network, whether you had it before or whether you can find it after. And fortunately for me, I mean, I had both before and I've had after, which I feel like allows me to speak out and to share my story and work on these kinds of projects. And for Tanya, I mean, she did not have that support. And amazingly now she has found a wonderful man and they're happily married, and he supports and loves and adores her the way that she deserves to be supported and loved and adored. And I mean, I think it's just a tragedy of life, and actually a story that is far too common.
I always wonder about your path. Not everyone would have the strength to do what you've done with your life, and that is dedicate your life to helping others who are in these vulnerable situations. But I also wonder if you sometimes in your quiet times refer back thinking, God, I wish I had another path. I wish I could have done something so different. I wish none of this was part of my life, and I don't want to do it tomorrow. Like, do you ever sort of just have those moments?
Well, I am only human, of course. I mean, of course I do. But I guess it always just comes back to, this is where I feel like I can make the most difference. And I know what it's like being on the other side. And I know what it's like to come back and experience all of the emotions that go along with being a survivor and a victim. And I know how isolated and alone I felt when I came back, even though I was surrounded by love and support. It still is, when you go through sexual abuse, when you go through abduction, when you go through that level of manipulation, you still feel like you're alone. And for anyone who's watching this, who has experienced some level of abuse or manipulation or rape or kidnapping, I want them to know that you're not alone. And so I guess I'll just keep on staying on this path.
What an incredible life's purpose. You're a hero. I just adore you, and I'm so proud of you. And I'm just so glad that you are who you are and that you're healthy and adjusted and are doing so much, for other people. Thank you so much for doing this tonight. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
The Girl Locked Upstairs, the Tanya Cash story, and Beyond the Headlines, the Tanya Cash story with Elizabeth Smart. That premieres June 8th on Lifetime. And by the way, I just want you to know, she still has that harp. She still has that harp. Famous picture. She said her mom sold her car to buy her that harp, and she's never getting rid of it. She says she plays it every so often, but not as much as she used to. Still to come, a legal kill or overkill? State of Missouri could execute a critically ill man in just 18 days. His family says he went into heart failure this week and can now barely walk or talk. But before he got sick, he talked to us for what may just be his very last interview ever. It's exclusive, and it's next. Will the state of Missouri execute a gravely ill man? David Hosier is scheduled to be put to death June 11th. That is 18 days from now. He was convicted back in 2013 of the first-degree murders of Angela and Rodney Gilpin. Prosecutors say he'd been having an affair with Angela while she was separated from Rodney. And when Angela went back to her husband, Hosier gunned them both down. But just this week, the condemned man was rushed to a hospital in heart failure. His brother says that he's in pain, that he can't walk, that he can barely talk. Nevertheless, last we checked, the state has not indicated there is any plan to halt the scheduled execution. Mere days before he actually fell ill, Hosier called a producer on this show for what will very likely be his final interview on Earth. They discussed his life behind bars, his thoughts about being put to death, and his continued claim that he's innocent. Here's some of that conversation.
You've been on death row for, I think, about 11 years. How do you spend your days usually?
Well, like I said, Missouri is the only state in the union that death row inmates are out in general population. And we're only at one institution as far as the guys are concerned. I'm not sure if they have any ladies on death row or not, but they're not at Potosi where all the guys are. Each housing unit has recreation where we go outside for rec. We can go to the gymnasium and play basketball. We can go to the library. We can go to the learning center and use the computers.
What are your interactions with the other inmates, particularly the other death row inmates? What sort of things do you guys discuss?
We all get along. We're here with like I said, guys that are doing the life without, guys that are here for, 10 years for something, whatever their crime is. Of course, there's murderers, there's bank robbers, there's child molesters. It runs the gamut. Whatever you're in prison for, you can be be here.
I know you have like a spiritual advisor. Do you think of yourself as a religious person?
Well, I will put it to you this way. I was raised in a Christian family. My grandfather was a Christian minister. So I have been brought up in the Christian faith, and I do believe in Jesus Christ as my Lord and salvation. I believe in God. I believe in reading the Bible.
And I know you've filed several appeals, and I've tried to follow your case as best as I can. And I was just wondering, do you still maintain that you're innocent of what you're in prison for?
Not only do I maintain it, I am innocent. I was not in Jefferson City. I was not in Cole County. I was in the state of Missouri at the time that Angela and Rodney Gilpin were killed. I'm no angel. But there are enough women out there, just like there are enough men, that are looking for friends with benefits, that you don't get upset just because one decides to go back to her husband or one decides to break it off with you. I don't want to sound crass, and I don't want, but it's one particular is not worth doing that over. I've been married and divorced 3 times. All 3 of my ex-wives are still alive.
Now, setting your own case aside, what do you think about the death penalty? Do you think that there are people who should die for their crimes?
Had you asked me 18 years ago or 15 years ago, I believed in the death penalty. But having seen what the prosecution has done in my case, and having talked to other inmates and seen the way the prosecution and prosecutors have violated constitutional and civil rights and the laws to get convictions, I can't say I actually do believe in it anymore.
If you are executed on June 11th, have you thought to yourself of what last words or message you would want to leave before you die?
Well, I am hoping that if I can get out to the public the type of things that the prosecutor and the judge pulled in my case to convict me wrongfully of a crime, if the people see, would they be able to look at it and go, is this the way I would want to be treated? Is this the way I would want one of my loved ones treated? Is this how I would want to see my neighbor treated? Did we elect these people to do this? They're supposed to be upholding the laws. They're supposed to be defending our civil rights and our constitutional rights. Is this the way we want to go about that? And hopefully it will get some change. If I could save even though I'm dead, hopefully I won't die in vain if I can at least save one person from going through what I've gone through.
Well, listen, you should know that the prosecutor said they had overwhelming evidence against him. And just a couple of things without going through the whole list. They found a murder weapon in his vehicle, along with like a police baton and, a knife and latex gloves, etc. Again, the police said this was an overwhelming case. My great thanks to Chris Maloney, our producer who conducted that interview. If you saw my prison interview with the convicted wife killer, Drew Peterson, you know it was like gloves off, right? No holds barred. I pretty much figured he'd never speak to me again, but it turns out I was wrong. The killer just wrote me a letter from prison, of course. And I'm going to share it with you next.
Incident? June's Journey is the hidden object game filled with mystery.
Honey, have you seen the dog?
There's a detective in all of us. June's Journey. Download now for free.
I got a brand new letter from prison the other day, which is not huge news in itself, but I was pretty surprised by the sender. This little gem is from Drew Peterson, former cop and convicted wife killer, to whom I paid a face-to-face visit a couple of months ago at his maximum security prison. His letter is surprising because he told me when I was there with him that he does not like to write letters. When you're in your cell, what are you doing typically?
Watching TV.
That's it?
That's the big event for the time I'm in there, so.
What about reading?
I don't read. I don't like to read. I don't enjoy it, so I don't do it. So.
Eyesight okay?
Eyesight's great, fine.
And what about writing? Do you write letters to anybody?
No.
Well, if you saw our conversation, which aired over several nights, you know that Drew Peterson said a lot of things, a lot of other things that left us scratching our heads. And apparently several lawyers were scratching their heads, too, because they tried to get their hands on our tapes. But Drew Peterson, he thought our Q&A went just fine. After telling me that he enjoyed my company, he writes this, and I quote, "I am always truthful when I take interviews, and I stand by what I say. I am always truthful and helping during all my interviews. I am fine with the results of the fitness test. I don't regret doing the interview. The people at the prison, both inmates or staff, could care less about the interview. I'm hoping for a new trial, but it's always a roll of the dice." That fitness test that he mentions is a mental exam that was requested by his own lawyers. As for a new trial, Peterson will be back in court in July for a status hearing. And as for the rest of it, that's where I turn to my expert, Catherine Ramsland, forensic psychologist and author of several books, including The Serial Killer's Apprentice, How Houston's Deadliest Murderer Turned a Kid into a Killing Machine. Dr. Ramsland, thanks so much for being here. I want to read for you how he opened the letter because I sort of thought it might be telling, and I want to get your thoughts on it. He says this: "You're welcome for the interview anytime. I enjoy your company, and I'm excited to see you. Come see me anytime." Thank you, of course, would have been implied, in my letter to him. But does this sound like a guy who is lonely and just needs company, or is there something more to this whole "you're welcome"?
I think he lost ground when he was in the interview with you, and he wants to regain it. He wants a chance to see you again so he can take charge of the narrative. He led with a response to you that he thought was going to be the definitive response, and you didn't accept it. You dug into it and showed him that it was deceptive, and I think he wants a chance to convince you about himself.
Well, that's interesting. There's also this little postscript. He said, "I would love to develop a friendship with you socially. However, my circumstances prevent it. Sorry." What do you make of that?
Well, I think it was a little bit facetious, but at the same time, he believes in his charm with women. And I think he believes he's going to get you back, hook you in some way, because he thinks that you do want to see him again. And that's his way of making sure he'll control it next time. He even said, "Now I'm guarded because you hadn't accepted his answer." He wants that chance to make sure you do accept it.
I have 10 seconds left, but he says he has no regrets and that he's always been truthful. What do you think?
Well, being truthful is not the same thing as telling the whole truth. So he was truthful in a way, but he sure didn't reveal much.
Boy, you always know. Dr. Ramsland, thank you so much for being on. And I'm going to call you back because I got some other letters that I want to share with my audience. There it is, The Serial Killer's Apprentice. It's great reading. Thank you so much to Dr. Ramsland. Still to come, a terrifying moment at an Amazon facility, and it's caught on camera. A gunman takes aim at his boss at point-blank range, and thank the Lord above he missed. How? How did he miss? I'm going to show you the full video and the harrowing chase that followed next. With a gun in your pocket and murder in your heart, it is not going to be a good day for anybody. But what happened this month at an Amazon facility in Ohio, that could not possibly have been what Ali Hamza Yusuf was expecting. Yusuf was the security guard you see right there. He was gunning for his supervisor, the guy in the vest there, the bright green vest, literally gunning for him. The police say, and the surveillance video clearly shows, that Yusuf took aim and fired at the other man's back at point-blank range. Yet somehow he missed, and then the supervisor made a run for it. So did Yusuf.
Mike, you got this. I got a content glass here.
Okay.
Eventually, police would stop his car a short time later, at which point he opened fire on them, reportedly hitting an officer in his bulletproof vest. Police fired back, and Yusuf did not have a bulletproof vest, so he was killed. It is not yet clear what set him off or how he ever got hired as a security guard in the first place. But police say, and that supervisor, I'm sure, would agree, that this workplace shooting could have been a whole lot worse than it ended up being. All right, so that's all I have in terms of crime and justice. But I do want to tell you on Monday, we've got a special for you on Memorial Day about serial killers. Dr. Ramsland's got some analysis on. I just love when she talks about the mind of a serial killer. So that's Monday. And Monday's Memorial Day. So can I ask you, please, if you're barbecuing and having parties, I love that. That's wonderful. But as a pious new American, like an immigrant, please celebrate those who died for us. It's Memorial Day. It's important to remember that we are what we are because of the lives that were given for our benefit. So Memorial Day, hot dog and a little remembrance. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Have a wonderful week.
Hey everybody, I'm Brian Enton filling in for Chris Cuomo tonight. We've got some big stories on this Friday of Memorial Day weekend, so let's get started. We're live tonight. Sean Diddy Combs has just been accused by yet another woman of drugging and sexually assaulting her. She is now the sixth woman to come forward and accuse the music mogul of sexual assault. Her name is April Lampros. She was a student in New York City